The dust settled around Clara's weathered boots as she stared at the two supply wagons sitting bold as brass in what used to be her stable. The irony wasn't lost on her. After 15 years of running the most honest livery in Copper Ridge, it'd finally become a criminal by accident. The wagons belonged to the Mendez gang, and they were packed with enough stolen goods to hang her 3 times over. What made it worse was the man walking toward her now, his silver star catching the afternoon sun like a broken promise. Sheriff. Jake Morrison had aged well, she had to admit. The boy who'd kissed her goodbye under the cottonwood tree had grown into a man with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the law, and eyes still blue enough to make her forget her own name. But those same eyes held a hardness now that cut through her like winter wind. Clara. His voice was steady, professional. Nothing like the whispered endearments she still heard in her dreams. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze even, as her heart hammered against her ribs. I suppose you're here about the wagons. You suppose, right? He stepped closer, and she caught the familiar scent of leather and sage that had haunted her for 15 long years. Care to explain how Miguel Mendez's stolen property ended up in your stable? Clara's laugh held no humor. You wouldn't believe. Me if I told you? Try me. The words hung between them like smoke from a dying fire. How could she explain that Maria Mendez, Miguel's own sister, had driven those wagons here at dawn, begging Clara to hide them until she could return her brothers? Stolen life to something resembling decent. How could she tell Jake that Maria's tears had reminded her of her own, shed in secret over a love that never should have been? Maria brought them, Clara said finally. She's trying to save her brother. Jake's jaw tightened. Maria Mendez is wanted for questioning in 3 territories. Harboring stolen goods makes you an accessory, Clara. You know that. I know a lot of things. The words came out sharper than she intended. I know what it's like to watch someone you love make choices that destroy everything good in their life. I know what it's like to hope they'll find their way back home. Something flickered in Jake's eyes, pain maybe, or recognition. For a moment, the years collapsed between them. She saw the young man who'd promised to come back from the war, who'd sworn their love could survive anything. But he'd come back different, harder, and she'd been different too, shaped by the letters that stopped coming, and the baby she'd lost while waiting for a man who'd already chosen his new life. That was a long time ago, Jake said quietly. Was it? Clara's voice caught, and she hated herself for the weakness, 'cause standing here now, it feels like yesterday. Jake removed his hat, running his fingers through hair that had grown silver. At the temples? Clara, I have to arrest you. You're harboring stolen property, I know. Unless, he paused, the word hanging between them like a lifeline, unless you help me find Maria and Miguel. End this before more people get hurt. Clara stared at him, seeing not the sheriff but the boy who'd taught her to skip stones across Miller's Creek, who'd carved their initials in the old oak tree, who'd promised her forever under a sky full of stars. And if I do, what then? You ride off into the sunset, duty done, and I go back to mucking stalls and pretending I never knew what it felt like to matter to someone. The words hit their mark. Jake flinched as if she'd struck him, and for a moment, his careful mask slipped. It wasn't like that, he said. When I came back from the war, you came back married. The accusation hung between them like a blade. 3 months after you stopped writing, I heard you'd married some banker's daughter in Denver. Didn't even have the courage to tell me yourself. Jake's face went pale beneath his tan. Clara, that's not what? Not true? I saw the announcement in the territorial paper, Jake. Mr. and Mrs. Jacob Morrison, married June 15th, 1872. I still remember the date she died. The words came out raw, broken. Sarah died 6 months after we married. Influenza took her and the baby. Clara's anger crumbled like a dam bursting. The baby. He'd had a baby with another woman while she'd been grieving the loss of theirs, the child he'd never known about. The secret she'd carried alone. I'm sorry, she whispered, and meant it. Loss was loss, no matter the circumstances. I married her because I thought you were dead. Jake's voice was barely audible. The letter I got from your cousin said you'd died of fever. I grieved you, Clara. I grieved us. The world tilted sideways. "What letter? What cousin, Rebecca?" she wrote, and told me. Jake stopped, his eyes widening as he saw the truth dawn on Clara's face. Rebecca lied. Clara's voice was hollow. She wanted you for herself. Always did. When you left for the war, she told me you'd asked her to look after me, but really, she was making sure I knew you'd forgotten me. Every letter you sent, she intercepted every letter I sent to you, never reached me. Jake's voice was raw with understanding. Dear God, Clara, all these years I thought that I didn't love you enough to wait. Clara's tears came then, 15 years of them, falling like rain on parched earth. I waited 2 years, Jake. 2 years of wondering why you'd stopped writing, why you'd forgotten me. When I heard about your marriage, I wanted to die. Jake reached for her then, his hands trembling as they cupped her face. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. I married Sarah because I was broken, because I thought I'd lost the only woman who'd ever mattered. But even on my wedding day, it was your face I saw, Jake, marry me? The words tumbled out desperate and raw. I know it's been 15 years. I know we're different people now, but what I feel for you, it never changed. It never will. Clara stared at him, seeing past the sheriff's badge to the heart of the man she'd never stopped loving. But before she could answer, the sound of horses approaching cut through the moment like thunder. Miguel Mendez rode into the yard with 4 of his men, guns drawn and eyes hard as flint. He was younger than Clara had expected, maybe 25. With his sister's dark eyes and their father's reputation for violence, "Sheriff Morrison," Miguel called out, his voice carrying the easy confidence of a man who'd never met a problem. He couldn't shoot. "Fancy meeting you here?" Jake stepped protectively in front of Clara, his hand moving to his gun. "Miguel, come to claim your stolen goods." Miguel's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Come to claim my sister, actually, Maria." He raised his voice. "I know you're here, Hermana. Time to come home." A shadow moved in the barn doorway, and Maria Mendez stepped into the light. She was beautiful in the way of desperate women everywhere. Sharp edges and haunted eyes, her dark hair escaping from a hastily pinned bun. "I'm not going back, Miguel," she said, her accent lending music to the words. "I'm tired of running, tired of stealing, tired of being afraid." "You don't get to choose," Miguel snapped.
House.
"Family is family." "Then start acting like family instead of an outlaw," Maria shot back. "These people," she gestured to Clara and Jake, "they showed me kindness when they had no reason to. They don't deserve to suffer for your sins." Miguel's face darkened. "My sins? Everything I did for us, for our family, on the railroad. Took our land, when they killed Papa. Papa died 5 years ago, Miguel. How long are you going to use his memory as an excuse for the choices you make?" The words hit like a physical blow. Miguel's gun wavered, and for a moment, Clara saw not the feared outlaw, but a lost young man trying to honor a dead father's memory. "The land was ours," Miguel said, his voice cracking. "Generations of our family lived on that land. They had no right. They had law," Jake said quietly. "Wrong law, maybe? Unfair law. But law nonetheless. This isn't the way to get justice, son. Don't call me son." Miguel's gun swung toward Jake. "You represent everything that destroyed my family.
I represent.
Can solve their problems without bloodshed." Pretty words from a man wearing a badge. Miguel's finger tightened on the trigger. "Tell me, Sheriff, what would you do if someone took everything you loved? If they destroyed your life and called it progress?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving to Clara. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "I'd probably do exactly what you did," he admitted. "I'd probably make the same mistakes, hurt the same innocent people, justify it the same way. But that doesn't make it right, Miguel, and it doesn't make it smart." "Then what would you do?" Maria stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "If you could go back, what would you do differently?" Jake's hand found Clara's, their fingers intertwining like puzzle pieces finding their match. "I'd choose love over revenge, hope over bitterness. I'd build something new instead of trying to tear down what took everything away." Miguel looked between his sister and the sheriff, seeing something that made his shoulders slump. "You're in love with him?" It wasn't a question. Maria's silence was answer enough. "He's a good man," she said finally. "Could have arrested me 12 times, but he didn't. He sees something in me that I'd forgotten existed. And what's that?" Before the running, before the fear, Maria's voice grew stronger. "I want that woman back, Miguel. I want to stop being afraid." Miguel lowered his gun, the fight going out of him like air from a punctured balloon. "If I surrender, they'll hang me." "Maybe," Jake said honestly. "Or maybe the judge will see that you're young, that you were trying to take care of your family. Maybe he'll see that you're ready to make amends. And if he doesn't?" Jake squeezed Clara's hand. "Then at least you'll die knowing you did the right thing at the end." Sometimes that's all we get, the chance to choose who we want to be in our final moments. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Then Miguel slowly holstered his gun. "Want to make a deal?" he said. "I'm listening. I surrender myself and return everything we stole. In exchange, you let my men ride away clean. They were just following orders. This was my choice, my responsibility." Jake considered this, and Maria makes her own choices now, Miguel's. The voice was thick with emotion. She always should have. Clara felt something break open in her chest, not heartbreak this time, but its opposite. Hope, bright and fierce as a prairie sunrise. "There's something else," Miguel continued. "Information you'll want about the railroad men who took our land. They've been buying up property with forged deeds, intimidating families into selling. For nothing, we weren't the only ones they destroyed." Jake's grip on Clara's hand tightened. "You have proof?" "In my saddlebags. Papers, forged documents, testimony from families they cheated. Everything you need to bring them to justice the right way." "Why?" Jake asked. "Why give this to me?" Miguel looked at his sister, seeing the hope in her eyes, the way she stood. A little straighter now that the burden of running was lifting from her shoulders. "Because some fights are worth winning, even if you don't get to see the victory." 3 hours later, the stolen goods had been loaded back onto the wagons. Miguel was in custody, and his men had ridden away free. The railroad evidence was in Jake's hands, and Maria was sitting on Clara's porch, looking younger than she had in years. "What will you do now?" Clara asked, settling beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "I don't know," Maria admitted. "I've been running so long I forgot what it felt like to stay in one place. You could stay here, could use help with delivery. And the town could use a good seamstress. I saw your stitching on Miguel's shirt. You have talented hands." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "You would do that? After everything?" "Everyone deserves a second chance," Clara said, glancing toward Jake, who was securing Miguel in the wagon that would take him to the territorial prison. "Sometimes that's all we need, someone willing to believe we can be better than our worst moments." Jake approached the porch, hat in hand, looking for all the world like a nervous suitor. "Miguel's secured. We'll head out for Santa Fe in the morning." "And after that?" Clara asked, her heart in her throat. "After that, I come back." Jake's voice was steady now. "Sure, that is if you'll have me. If you'll let me spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost." Clara stood, crossing to him, her hands finding the star on his chest. "Jake Morrison, are you asking me to marry you again?" "Every day for the rest of my life, if that's what it takes." She reached up, touching his face, memorizing the lines that time and sorrow had carved there. "Then I guess you'd better start planning a wedding." His kiss tasted like promises and second chances, like the hope that had sustained her through 15 years of wondering what if. Round them, the desert wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara Jameson believed in forever. Maria cleared her throat softly. "Should I leave you two alone?" They broke apart, laughing like the young people they'd once been. "Stay," Clara said, still wrapped in Jake's arms. "This is your home now, if you want it. We're family, all of us broken, all of us trying to find our way back to something good." As the sun set over Copper Ridge, painting the sky in shades of gold and promise, 3 people who'd lost everything they thought mattered discovered that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as endings. Sometimes love really is patient. Sometimes it really does endure. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it comes home. The wedding took place 6 weeks later, under the same cottonwood tree where Jake had once promised to return. Miguel sent his blessing from prison, along with word that the railroad men had been arrested and the stolen lands returned to their rightful owners. Maria stood as Clara's maid of honor.
Oh.
Her new dress, a testament to the skill that was already making her the most sought after. Seamstress in 3 territories. As Jake slipped the ring onto Clara's finger, the same ring he'd bought 15 years ago and carried in his pocket like a prayer, she thought about the strange ways of fate. How sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. How sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what really matters. "I love you, Jake," whispered as the preacher pronounced them husband and wife. "I never stopped. I never will." "I know," Clara whispered back, her heart so full. It ached. "I love you too. Always have. Always will." Their first kiss, as husband and wife, tasted like homecoming. Like every sunset they'd watch together for the next 40 years. Like the children they'd raise and the grandchildren who'd play under this same cottonwood tree. And if sometimes Clara still thought about the wagons that had started it all, if sometimes she wondered what would have happened if Maria Mendez had chosen a different stable, a different woman to trust with her desperate hope, she kept those thoughts to herself. Some stories, after all, are too perfect to question. Some. Love is too precious to doubt in the end. That's all any of us can ask for. Love worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth believing in against all odds. Clara Jamison Morrison had found hers twice, lost it once, and would spend the rest of her days grateful for the second chance that had come disguised as 2 wagons in her stable, and a sheriff with eyes like summer sky. The desert had taught her many things over the years, but perhaps the most important was this. Sometimes the most beautiful sunsets come after the stormiest days. Sometimes the deepest love grows in the harshest soil, and sometimes, if you're patient enough, strong enough, foolish enough to keep believing, love really does find a way home.